It is an honor to welcome Raghunandan ji. A rare blend of intellect, devotion and dedication. Trained as a chemical engineer in his early years, was deeply influenced by the ideals of Vivekananda Kendra and Swamiji and Thakur, where he actively served during its formative years. For over 3 decades or so, he with his better half nurtured a 10+2 senior secondary school in Bhilwara, Rajasthan, shaping the young minds and not just academically but spiritually also, imbibing in them the values of Indian culture and service. A profound thinker, an accomplished singer, inspiring orator and a lifelong sadhaka, Sri Raghunandan ji has authored over a dozen insightful books on Indian philosophy, including a lucid commentary on the Laghu Yoga Vasishta, reflecting his deep scholarship and experiential understanding. Presently settled in Kerala, he dedicates his time to spiritual practice, study and guiding sincere seekers. With a voice that carries the depth of devotion and a mind that bridges science with scriptural wisdom, Sri Raghunandan continues to inspire all those who seek clarity, purpose and inner transformation. Please join me in warmly welcoming Sri Raghunandan.
Satyamadvayam Vangmanoti gocharancha neti neti bhavitam Tam namami deva deva Ramakrishna Vishwaram Tam namami deva deva Ramakrishna Vishwaram. Pranam to everyone who is in this meeting. Today I'd like to begin with a memory of one of the great presidents of India, who was called as People's Presidents, on his 10th death anniversary. Today was the day when APJ Abdul Kalam ji left his mortal coil. When I talked about the program which was held to commemorate the centenary of respected Professor Satyanarayana Shastri ji, the very next day when this meeting was going on, I was remembering the meeting, and immediately Vasuji said that actually Satyanarayana Shastri should have got a Nobel Prize for his findings on energy model. And then he said that I was talking about it to the other people. So you include this in your topic because I was supposed to give a podcast today. I said instead of talking about my book, The Wisdom of Vasishta, I said it's only right that I should speak exclusively on Professor Satyanarayana Shastri ji, or Shastri ji as we fondly called him. We had heard, Vasudev ji may recall, during our training in Kanyakumari, stalwarts like Swami Ranganathanand ji, Swami Chinmayanand ji, Swami Chidbhavanand ji, and others who are very accomplished in this field talked to us who were trainees at that time. And the most beautiful entry was of Shastri ji, who came to Kanyakumari like anyone and every one of us. So simple, so approachable, so amicable. And immediately we scored an equation with him. And he talked to us on Vedanta. In fact, the way in which he introduced Vedanta itself was so unique. I'll be talking about it. He not only talked about Vedanta, but he taught me personally, because I used to have sessions alone with him in Idenhalli. How to study Yoga Vasishta and scriptures like that. I'm extremely grateful to him The way in which he used to approach Vedanta was something very, very, very unique. And I learned from him that Vedanta or yoga or spirituality or religion is not to be talked about, not to be discussed, but is to be practiced. The moment you think of practice, then people will start asking, how is it that we all know about Kathopanishad, we know different Upanishads. We have read about Yoga Vasishta. How to study it? And perhaps I thought I'll mention these points which were extremely useful to me, and they continue to be useful to me even today in not only my Swadhyaya but also my spiritual practice. When I first met him, he asked him, how is it that a professional has entered this field? Why did you enter this field? I just told him that I had a lot of questions to ask. And even before joining Kendra, I had visited Narmada, banks of Narmada, and met so many people, very good people and very elevated people. But somehow or the other, probably I was not prepared. I was not able to get the answer which I thought I should get. In fact, that's the first mistake I did, and probably many of us do that. But when Shastriji asked me about it, I told him I had a lot of questions, and I've heard so many people, but somehow or the other, it doesn't click in my mind. Suddenly he asked me a question. Why do you ask questions? I mean, that was something which was unexpected. I said, I have so many doubts. And I said, yes, all right. What happens to you when you go into the doubtful situation in your mind? What happens to you? I said, perhaps there is a kind of restlessness. He caught that point. Yes, there is basic restlessness. And from there, he started teaching about the Upanishads. He said, you ask questions like the one which he had asked. What happens to you when you want to ask a question? What happens to your mind? There is restlessness. He said, let's talk about the other things. We'll take only restlessness. And he says, this happens to be the basic problem of all of us. All people, all men. Then he asked me, do you think that everyone requires spirituality? I was not able to answer that. I kept quiet, and he answered that not at all. Anywhere between 95 to 96% of the people do not require spirituality. I was a little surprised. Here is a person who is talking about spirituality, and he says 95 to 96% of the people don't require spirituality. Why is it so? He answered. In fact, he was so organized in his mind. He said it's because of this restlessness. How is it that he used a word, how is it that we live this restlessness in our life? He said there are three ways in which we live. First is the desires. He talked about desires. Second one is worrying. And the third is boredom. He says any problems, any human problems you take, they fall under these three categories: desires, worrying, and boredom. He said, let's take desires first. What do we desire? The grossest level is we like to come in contact, or we like our senses to come in contact with their respective objects. Let us say that somebody likes sweet, somebody likes coffee, and he drinks it, and somehow or the other, after drinking or after eating, he feels happy. But he said, let us examine this coffee business. In fact, he was so humorous. He said that let's do this Sukha Dukkha Pariksha. Sukha Dukkha Viveka, if you may call it. What happens to you when you are happy? What happens to you when you are unhappy? He said, Coffee Sukham. What is this coffee Sukham? You go to a restaurant or at home, you are given a very hot, very nice, tasty brewed coffee in front of you. You are served that. You drink that, you are extremely satisfied and happy. Second cup of coffee, there is a slight knit on your eyebrows. You drink it. Third, the knitted eyebrows become stronger. And fourth, you say, sorry. At that time, you forget the etiquettes and you say, no, I have had enough. What happened? The same coffee which gave you happiness, the fourth coffee did not give you. In fact, probably it was unpleasant. It was not good. It was positively, probably miserable also, because you don't want coffee anymore. So he says, he came to this position that the happiness does not lie in coffee. Where does it lie? And this is the way in which he talked about the happiness analysis. You are happy because, in fact, the same coffee, the same first coffee, if it is offered to you when you are not in a mood, let's say that you have had a loss, you are in a nasty mood because you are not able to do well in something, you had a quarrel with someone, that same coffee doesn't give you happiness. So this is how he started convincing. He says, this is not to be discussed. Again, he is to repeatedly say, this is not to be discussed, this is to be experienced. When you experience something, happiness, when you come in contact with the objects, examine what happens. And when you examine, then you'll suddenly come to know. In fact, it will be a proof enough to tell you or to convince you that happiness doesn't lie in the object. What about unhappiness? Dukkha. Then he asked me, when are you happy? When do you consider yourself happy? I told him many times when I used to be extremely short-tempered at that time. Thank God I believe I have come out of it. I used to be extremely unhappy when I used to get angry or short-tempered at somebody. I told him it is at that time I'm unhappy. Then he asked a very fundamental question. What is your state what is your mental state when you are unhappy or when you are angry? He forced me to think. He said, in fact, I had to sort of close my eyes and think. I said that many a times my mind is coming out with so many thoughts that I am not able to express it. My speech stops, and probably I become so angry that I get up and I walk off. I was not actively short-tempered, I was passively short-tempered. So I would go away from the room or from that place with suddenly leaving everybody and then going off. So that's what happened. Says, what do you mean by saying that your thoughts are uncontrollable? There are so many thoughts, crowd of thoughts troubling you. What is it? He said, they come so fast that I am not able to, neither able to express them nor able to contain them. He says, exactly. The mind is in speed. It is very, very fast. And then when this speed occurs, then you become miserable. You see, this is how he used to teach. He has taught me. And, it's so convincing that I feel that this is how our Upanishadic rishis used to encourage their disciples to ask questions. Many a times when I'm slightly digressing from here, many a times when we read a Upanishad, when we hear about an Upanishad, what happens to us? What is the meaning of this? How is this happen? Was this scripture really as old as they claim it to be? For instance, Yoga Vasishta, they say that it is written by Valmiki. Is it really written? So these are unnecessary questions. These questions are not to be entertained. What are the questions which you should ask? You should ask, what is the state of mind when we have to receive the wisdom from the Rishi? If it is receptive, what should be its condition? It should be calm. It should be controlled. It should be away from all the unnecessary thoughts. Then only you will be able to receive it. So this was this is, I personally feel, is the Upanishadic way of learning an Upanishad, or understanding about the methodology of understanding the Upanishad. If you understand the Upanishad, then I personally feel you don't have to do anything. Your life falls into that channel and it becomes so healthy. So Sukha Dukkha Pariksha, or Sukha Dukkha Viveka, if may call it. That is, what happens to you when you are happy? It is fast, the mind is extremely fast, and the mind, when you are miserable and when you are happy, the mind is clear, mind is calm. There are least number of thoughts. This is Sukha Dukkha. Then what about the worrying part of it? We'll come to the next part of worrying. What is worrying? You go on thinking about the same problem again and again and again. Shastriji used to say that I am a victim of this worrying. I am a victim of this too much of intellectualization. And perhaps somewhere I identified myself with him, because I too used to be extremely I used to intellectualize. What is the meaning of this? What does this word mean? All these things I used to do. And then he said that when he started talking about it, it was, the roads were opening up as far as I was concerned to understand what is really Vedanta. He said the mind focuses. When the mind focuses, there is some kind of, he used to use this place, there is stress in this particular point. There is focusing on this point. And when that focuses, you are not able to take it for a very, very long time. You cannot take the stress for a long time, and that's how you become miserable due to worrying. What should be done when you are doing worrying? In fact, most of us, if you are, that's what he used to explain when he told this. He said, why most of the people do not require spirituality is they are not as miserable as perhaps people like us are. Some desire comes, somebody wants to buy a two-wheeler or a car. He gets a desire, he works for it, and he earns the required amount and he buys the car. Okay. Somebody feels like eating something, if he has money, then he goes to a restaurant or buys things and he eats. He completes his desire. And sometimes when these desires are not available to us, we console ourselves. Probably after some time it will be alright. That is, all of us, most of this 96% of the people have a mechanism, something like a kavacham, something like an armor, which tells it's okay. You forget about it, they let go, they leave it. And once it is left, then we are able to lead our proper life, there is normal life, as we consider it as the normal life. So, what we have to do is, we focus, and most of us, what happens, that focus goes off, so we are at ease again. We'll probably think of something else. What about boredom? What happens to you when you are bored? Then, I remember it happened in Giddenhalli. Raghuramji was with us at that time. I think Raghuramji will also remember. He said, what is boredom? I was unable to answer that question, and Shastriji himself, he'll allow us to think, pause and think, and after that, suppose we are unable to answer, he will give us clues. What happens to a person who is bored? He asked me. I suddenly remembered one of my classmates, one Dhar, Motilal Dhar. He was my classmate, doing chemical engineering in Warangal. At one point of time, he lost all interest in everything we do. He was a good player. He stopped coming to the nets for cricket practice. We used to go for coffee. He'll start drinking coffee and then halfway through he says, I'm bored, yaar, main ja raha hu. Something like that he will tell for everything. Then, so what happened next? Shastriji asked. He says, after some time it went off. When did it happen? When we started getting these periodicals and submissions, when that started happening, his mind became alright and he was alright. Then Shastri is asking him, what happened? What happened to his mind at that time? He says, probably his mind was random. I said, probably, I didn't know, because I have not examined it. Exactly, he said. Immediately, Raghuramji, who was never far away from humor, he told a joke about a comedian who went to California or somewhere, and then he was sitting in a pub. He told about that. The end of the thing was when he said for everything he invited, he said, let's have a game of snooker. He said, no, I have played it once, but I never liked it. Let's have a cocktail. He says, I tried it once, I never liked it. He went on replying like that. Then finally, the comedian was bored because there was nobody else in that. He said that this old man was sitting with him, with whom he was trying to talk. He said his eyes lit up. He got up and introduced one young man. He said, Mr. So-and-so, this is my son, he said. The comedian was never far from humor. He said, he is your only son, I hope, he said. So everybody laughed. He says, that is what happens. Shastriji joined us in humor, but suddenly he had the knack of turning us from to the main topic. He said, random mind, chanchalata, also gives you misery. On one time, it's focusing and the chanchalata. Both these cause misery. So you have to avoid it. How to avoid it? This is where he said Vedanta comes to our rescue. How? He said at this time that we are dealing with mind here. We are dealing with mind here. So what should be the remedy? It should be mental only. But then, in fact, I was little confused at that time. Looking at me, he said, I know what you are thinking. Most of us are unable to handle our mind, and that's why we are miserable. How to do it? He said, innumerable ways. There are innumerable ways which our culture tells us. At the body level, at the breathing level, at the mental level. So he said, he introduced us very simply to this Panchakosha Viveka of Taittiriya Upanishad in so simple a manner that we were able to absorb it. So then this is how he taught us Vedanta, or rather I should use the word, how to practice Vedanta in our life. And I think that is the one which has helped me a lot even now. He would say, then he said, let's come back to the happiness analysis. Different questions are asked. In many of the Upanishads, there are different types of questions. Somebody is asking about whether there is existence after death or the existence completely stops after when somebody dies. Somebody asks, how is it that by knowing, that is, he says that by knowing which everything else is known, on knowledge, and finally he said the happiness which is most important. He used to say happiness happens to be the most important aspect of our life. He would ask, why is it that we act? We act because something makes us happy. Somebody pursues scholastically. Somebody pursues socially. He wants to be useful to the society. Someone wants to indulge in, and somebody wants to become powerful. Says, what is it that is behind all these activities? Whatever activity you take, activity is important. What they do is not important. We are talking about activity here. Why is it that we get involved in activity? So he answered, says, this is the way in which we spend our desires, spend our energy on desires, spend our energy on worry, spend our desire on randomness. Even randomness is useful because it's something like in dreams. Dreams, there is total randomness, there is no control whatsoever. What happens is the energy which is produced, it's spent. Now, here comes an analogy which the theory which he used to tell and which we are very fond of telling. So, I'll come to that presently. We act because we are unable to keep quiet. We cannot keep quiet. Just you have an example. Somebody is able to sit quietly for 5 minutes. When I say, Shastri used to say, when I say quietly, there should be no props whatsoever. No television, no newspaper, no book, no music, nothing to eat, nothing to indulge in, no sense object. How long can you sit without anything? Without thinking, he would say. Then immediately I remember to have said that thinking, I don't think it's possible, but probably I will be able to sit for 5 minutes. Somebody else, he said, somebody else may be able to sit for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It depends. But after 4 hours, he has to come up. So he would say that meditation is impossible for 24 hours. Now, this is where his practical Vedanta came. It's impossible for 24 hours. So you go on extending it, that's all right. And probably a time will come, probably you'll be able to sit in meditation for days together. That's not our point. But what is important is we are unable to sit quietly for longer times or for shortened times as the case may be. And that is why we indulge or we get involved in these 3 activities called as desires, worry and boredom. When this happens, happiness, what is happiness? These 3 categories of questions which is asked by Upanishads. He says they give one singular answer, he used to say. Only single answer. When the mind is silent and is in its, these are the words of Shastriji. When the mind is in its pre-thinking state, in its non-thinking state, in its silent state, that is when you are happy. He would give various examples. And those examples were not from Upanishads, they were examples from day-to-day affairs. He would say, let us say that you are preparing for a speech, an oration, and maybe you have to speak for about 15 minutes or 10 minutes. So those 10 minutes, before those 10 minutes, what happens is you are preparing. You are so actively involved in finding out, what should be the logic, how the point should be developed, and how will I be able to finish it properly? Will I be able to conclude it properly? All these worries are going on in the mind of the person who is about to speak. His name is called, he goes to the podium and starts speaking, and he finishes it in 10 minutes. And after those 10 minutes, you ask him how he feels. He says, oh, I am so happy that it is over. He is not even asking, how did I fare? It's over. A person who is taking an examination, in fact this happens to most of the students. When they take the examination, before that there is so much of confusion that will I be able to remember it at that proper time? Will those questions which I had prepared, will they appear? All those things are going on. When the examination is over, when he comes out of the examination hall, you ask him, oh, it's over, Baba. Nothing. I don't have to think about that subject. So, what happens is, his thinking state was there, and this thinking state came to an end when that event was over. The mind became silent. So that we said that it's quite all right. Yes, we do experience this. But don't you think it's too small a period? It may be for 5 minutes, because then again we start thinking, I have next is fluid mechanics, something like that. So I have to prepare for that. So maybe for 5 minutes I lived that state. Shastriji would say that, look man, look young man, you have not thought about all the states which you live. At that time, in fact, we had heard about this Jagrat Swapna Sushupti, because we had read, at that time I had read it also. It didn't strike me at that time. Shastriji asked, you have these 3 states, aren't you living during these 3 days, the 3 states? When you are wakeful, when you are dreaming, and when you are fast asleep, you are in deep sleep. Aren't you living? And I said, yes, that's true. Have you ever examined this deep sleep state? And I remember, it was at this point of time, he said, think about it, and he went out. After some time, we came back. And he asked me, did you think about it? I said, I thought about it. I do agree that it's a very large state, but it was almost unconscious. I was not conscious about it. He says, you are not conscious about it. What does it mean? Was your mind awake at that time? I said, I don't think so. Then he quoted a very beautiful verse, mantra from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. He says, what happens to a person who is in deep sleep? He said, Tatra mata amata bhavati, pita apita bhavati, stenaha astenaha bhavati, bhrunaha abhrunaha bhavati, ananvagatam papena, ananvagatam punyena, tino bhavati, sarvan shokan hridayasya. In fact, this was the tone he used to say. It's ringing in my ears. He says, what happens to a mother when she is deep sleep? She has lost all her motherhood during that time. The worry of looking after a child, the worry of feeding him, the worry of its growing up. Father loses all its fatherly qualities. He has to arrange for funds. He has a loan to fulfill. So many things are there, and all those are gone. Similarly, stenaha, that is, a thief loses all the qualities of that thief. What are those qualities? Will I be discovered? Will I be found out by the police? Have I left any clue in some place where I did this? All those worries are gone. He includes not only positive but negative, but also positive. He says even tapasa, the person who is doing tapascharya, he loses the tapascharya's qualities. In fact, the example of Gautam Buddha is very much there. When he stopped struggling and had that deep sleep, and after the deep sleep, when he got up, he was enlightened. So that's a different story, but he was telling that this is how it is. Then we are most of us were convinced that yes, we do. He says 1/3 of our life we spend in deep sleep. Do you think it's less? I said no. But the moment I said but, he said, he was smiling. He says, all right, come, let's you come out of it, come out with it. I told him, yes, there are many moments when we get this object of, say, let us say that I love rasmalai. I am not expecting it. I am not thought about it. I am visiting a friend, and he brings out a plate in front of me and then says, you like this, isn't it? You take this. Unexpected. I didn't have the desire. And when I eat it, I am happy. I meet a friend after, say, 40 years. Just, in fact, when we met Ratna Didi in Bangalore, it was almost 43 years after we saw her. There was so much of intimacy, there was so much of affection, as if this 43 years have gone. I was not expecting. It came just like that. How do you answer this question? This is the time. In fact, he introduced what he used to call it as the energy model. He said that it is from my personal experience I am talking about it. If you ask me about Shastras, I said I do not know. And he used to even very openly confess that I don't think you require to refer to Shastras to share your experiences. That's what he said, and I totally agree with him. He said, out of my experience I am telling, there is a concept, or there is the energy rising from the spine, from the lower centers, it goes to the higher centers. So this pulsating energy, it is not the energy of electricity or the physical energy as such, but it is the pranic energy, which Bergson called it as elan vital. So that pulsating comes, and then he used to say that it comes and creates a load in this region. Probably because he was an intellectual, and probably people who are intellectuals, they get this energy. But somebody may get this energy, there may be load in this throat center also, when they would like to talk. In fact, they are unable to keep quiet. You see, the gossipers we have heard, they say that when people hear, the gossiper hears something, in Kannada there is it's not digested in the stomach, it has to come out. So they'll start talking about it. There is a wonderful joke about four monks belonging to different orders. They say that one day only four of us were there, and somebody suggested, we all have some weakness or the other. We are all very great friends, so we'll confess it. So one person said, one father said, I have a weakness for gambling, not high stake gambling, a small thing. I like to play cards. The second one said, I have my weakness for eating. The third person said, I am very happy when I am in company of women. The fourth one, he kept quiet. He says that we have confessed, and why is it that you are not confessing this thing? He says, no, it's not worth confessing. He said, no. Then they got more interested. Come on, come out with it. He said, I am a gossiper. So whatever he had heard, he had to gossip. So people probably they have this center to spend away. Somebody, as Shastriji used to say, that whenever he used to feel a load here, he would walk. That is Shatpata. They call it in Kannada as Shatpata. That is, you walk to and fro so that the energy is spent. So he says that when that energy is spent, you feel happy. When that gossiper talks about it, he is happy. When the person who likes sweets but it is unexpected, he becomes happy. So he said that, is it verifiable? For that, I remember Shastriji telling, in fact it's etched in my brain. Everything is verifiable provided you are sincere. If you are sincere, it's verifiable. If you want arguments, then you become a pandit. You become a scholar, and you keep on talking about it, and you will not experience what the Upanishads have to give you. That's where he talked about energy. He said, it was EP, that is energy produced, is equal to energy spent plus energy load. That energy load which is there, wherever in these centers, that when that load, that is plus energy spent. If and when this energy spent becomes equal to the energy produced, that means the load is off, the load becomes zero. This was the equation. To explain it, he gave that sonometer experiment on all that, but I think it's not important. It's not important because we want to practice Vedanta. At least I am talking because it's my experience. I feel unless and until you practice, Vedanta will be only in your head and it will not be in your life. Having said that, he would say that this energy model is verifiable. How? He said, for that you require antarmukhata. Now, what is this antarmukhata? In fact, Shastriji did not explain it in so many words. He demonstrated it with his life, because he used to create an energy, a kind of atmosphere where anybody comes into that field, you fall into that happily. And he would say that, now think about it. When he said think about it, it wasn't only that ordinary word think. What he meant was, later on he said, by thinking I mean do vichara, do discrimination, try to analyze. All these things are happening at the intellectual level. But then at the end of it, what happens is, when you are convinced, the mind starts becoming quiet. The external mind, I call it as external mind, which is involved in thinking, and it becomes quiet, and suddenly you enter yourself. And when you start entering yourself, it becomes a journey, it becomes a real journey, an adventure into your own self, an adventure into your consciousness. And this happens to be the greatest wealth which is given out by Shastriji. And in this thing, there is one small doubt which I had, and which many of us may have, that suppose the energy model is good, then why not keep eating intermittently? You don't have to create dukkha coffee. You keep drinking coffee. You get, suppose coffee is bringing you boredom, then you indulge in something else. So that, what is it that you are doing? You do energy spending. So this is where the catch is. If you start doing it, then we'll become Epicureans. That is, all the time we get indulged in whatever we are doing. Now, Epicurean need not be only a person who gets involved with his sense objects. Epicurean is also a person who works like an workaholic, who works for 24 hours without anything. And if you ask me, this gives me joy. I said, all right. That's that he says, these people come under 96% of the people. He used to say, don't disturb them. They'll come to know about it themselves. On their own, they'll come to know about it. They'll hit upon something will happen, and they'll understand, what is it that I have been doing? Right from morning till night, I'm working. I have never given a thought to myself. And probably in one of the last meetings, with physical meetings, if I may say so, I had with Shastriji, he said that this happens to be the crux of Vedanta. He says, don't be dependent on the objects. You become free from those objects. And to become free from the objects, you have to live Vedanta. And once you start living Vedanta in our own way, Sri Ramakrishna used to give M, who wrote Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, used to say, M was the teacher who was a direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. He would say that each one of us goes with a vessel in our hand to the ocean. And I too had come to the ocean of Sri Ramakrishna. And it was my small cup, if I may say so, and I am collecting the water and giving it to them. So we receive what our cup can hold. And I have felt that I think I have received, and it is able to give me so much of courage, so much of persistence, so much of sincerity in all my sadhana. I take care to see that as far as possible, I don't go away. But many times, after all, mind, it has had that habitual things. Sometimes I too fall, I too have fallen, but I have risen because of this encouragement which was given by Shastriji. In fact, Vedanta, and in particular, this Yoga Vasishta was introduced to me by Shastriji. After our training was over, I was posted as in charge of 4 states, the Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka and Kerala. I had to come to Bangalore because I had to go to Mysore. So immediately I went and met Shastriji, and I remember he gave me very fondly the book Laghu Yoga Vasishta, which is of the Nirnaya Sagar Press. This Nirnaya Sagar Press had published it, and I remember that it's still with me. He gave it to me, and then he said, "You study it." I told him, Shastriji, I have never studied Sanskrit as such. Maybe I'm able to chant because I have a ear, I have a listening ear, so because of that I'm able to chant. He says not only a person who is having a listening ear will have the strength or the capacity to absorb what is written, what is in that sound. He says, read it and you will get it. Then afterwards, after giving it to me, he said, do you know how you should read it? I kept quiet. I didn't know. I just nodded my head like this. He said, you have been doing little meditation. He says, you start reading. Maybe 2, 3, 4 verses from the Yoga Vasishta. And then close your eyes. Close your eyes and initially think about it. Gradually, you start, in fact, first time when you read it with sound. You loudly, it should be audible. Audibly you read it, and those 3 verses or 2 verses, if you want, those 2 verses will remain in your mind, and you just try to quieten the mind. And once the mind quietens, then that sound itself will take care of it, and you learn. That's what I started doing. I know that this. People say that I have done a good job as far as this Laghu Yoga, the wisdom of Vasishta is concerned, which got honor and whatever. But I still feel the technique of studying the Upanishads, the technique of studying Yoga Vasishta and living the essence therefrom was taught to me by respected, dear Satyanarayana Shastri. I'm very grateful to you and to all of you to listening with patience. Thank you, Shastriji.